So for today's lesson, we're going to be looking at personification. So let's take a look at this first example. What do these three sentences have in common? The ancient car groaned into third gear. The clouds scattered rain throughout the city. The tropical storm slept for 2 days. What do they all have in common? Can a car groan? The ancient car groaned into third gear? That doesn't really happen. Cars don't make those kind of sounds. The clouds scattered rain throughout the city. Do clouds really pick things up and scatter them? The tropical storm slept for 2 days. Do storms really sleep? No, they don't. That's why we call this personification. If you want to add this to your list of definitions, personification is a figure of speech that gives the qualities of a person to an animal, an object, or an idea. For example, the wind yelled all night long. Wind cannot yell, only a living thing can yell. Therefore, we call this personification, giving the qualities of a person to an animal, an object, or an idea. So here's some examples. The moon smiled down upon the sleeping city. Can a moon really smile? No, not really, but if it is personified, it can. Or the piano sang a beautiful song to all the audience. Again, we know pianos cannot sing. However, if it's personified, it can. Or my computer hates me. Some of you might be feeling this way after this week. But we know that computers don't have feelings, so this is another example of personification. The camera loves me. Same thing. You really can't have a camera with feelings. It doesn't happen. This is another example of personification. Opportunity knocked on the door. Here's another example of personification. Opportunities don't really knock, but literally, in personification, they can. And the sun greeted me this morning. Another example of personification. We know sun doesn't really greet people with hello, but if it's given human qualities, it could. So I've given you a Google Doc that's attached to this little demonstration. So once you're done with the entire PowerPoint video before you start with it, but basically, when you get to this part, you're going to read the sentences. You're not going to underline. You're going to actually write out the object being personified, and you're going to describe what that means. And I attached this to a Google Doc, so you can just type it right onto the Google Doc and make life easier. But you are, instead of underlining, you're just going to write out what is being personified. So moving on to personifying objects. So that's another part that you're going to be doing. Also located on the same Google Doc, just below the first couple examples. And when you're doing this, you are giving an object human characteristics. So you're kind of doing the opposite. For example, if we have leaves on a windy day, and we're trying to turn that into personification, we could say the leaves danced in the breeze, giving it human qualities. Here's another example. If we have a light bulb, and that is your object, and you are asked to give it human characteristics, you could say the light bulb happily smiled upon the room. We know light bulbs don't smile, but if it's using personification, they could. Same thing with the alarm clock. If you are giving an alarm clock human characteristics, you could say the alarm clock shouted at me early in the morning. So you have another section on your handout where you're actually changing and turning these phrases and words into personification. So rewrite each sentence and change the words in parentheses to words that would describe a human's actions. I think I did the first example on there for you, and you have a couple others to practice. So you're kind of doing the opposite. Now you're creating it. You might be wondering, after all of this, why would an author want to use personification? Well, personification creates imagery. What is imagery? It's what we can create and see in our mind. Personification gives life to inanimate objects. So, quick review. What is a simile? A comparison of two unlike things using like or as. Metaphor, a comparison of two unlike things without using like or as. And again, how do similes and metaphors create imagery? Same as above. They pretty much can give more of a visual image in our mind when we're trying to picture what the poem or the figurative language is telling us. So, what type of figurative language? Simile, metaphor, or personification? We would have had more pizza to eat if Tammy hadn't been such a hog. So, what's being compared? Tammy and the hog. What does this mean? Tammy ate more than her share. And in our mind, we can kind of picture maybe a large pig named Tammy eating too much. Something like that comes to mind when you think about this as you're reading it. Well, you could have that. Another type here, another example. The front door screeched as I slowly opened it to sneak into my house. This is an example of personification because doors do not screech. So, what is being compared? The door to a human. What does that mean? The door made a sound that sounded like screaming. And what image comes to mind? You might think of a door, like maybe broken down, falling off its hinges, making terrible noises. Or you might look like that. And physical exercise is like medicine for some people. Maybe some of you have discovered this during this time away. So, what's being compared? Exercise to medicine. What does it mean? Exercise makes people feel better, just like medicine makes people feel better. So, what image comes to mind? You might picture somebody out exercising and smiling because they feel better. Or you might picture that. So, either way, these are all examples of figurative language. We just saw an example of a metaphor, personification, and now we see simile. Because again, in number 1 up here, physical exercise is like. The word using like or as to compare two unlike things makes it a simile. So hopefully that clears it up a little bit for you. There is another section for you to practice when it comes to that. And this is only for 8th grade. 8th grade has an additional assignment looking at the poem Ode to Mi Gatto, which is a cute little poem about a cat. 8th grade is going to be moving a little further and identifying figurative language in this poem. 6th grade, stop here. Don't pay any attention to this. You'll be confused. You're done. So that's it for personification today, and a quick little review of simile, metaphors, and personification. And hopefully this was helpful.